If I'm dictating everything, then the only voice that's heard is mine. And frankly, I don't think I'm interesting enough or smart enough to be the only voice that makes an impact. So you get people early in their career going to business school, really studying like, what are we doing in this business? How do I think like a business person? But then when it comes time to actually create something, they don't have those creativity skills.
When it comes down to the culture shift and advancement in marketing, what shift has taken place that you've seen?
So
Eric Martinez is a marketing executive who's spent over 20 years shaping campaigns that don't just sell, but connect.
From launching debut novel to leading impactful health equity campaigns, Eric's journey is a masterclass in connecting brands with human emotion.
in order to understand why a conclusion is valid, you have to understand the assumptions that go into the argument. And if you can't map it, you don't know it. If you want to chase every single data point, at some point it's going to lose meaning, right? You can know exactly what happened, but you have no idea why. It's also, I'll say, really easy for people to get lost in the data.
That's good. That's good. No, explain. This is good.
What was the moment you realized marketing wasn't just about selling, but about making people feel something real?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Here's an actual cool fact, yo. Did y'all know that you get 86,400 seconds deposited into your day? So you get that much time in your day. Now the question is, what are you utilizing that time to do? Are you impacting lives? Are you impacting your organization? I always love to tell like entrepreneurs, Fortune 500 leaders, executives, what are you doing to help excel yourself, upskill yourself so you can be able to impact your organization on a day-to-day basis? What we do on this podcast is help bring in the top tier talent so you're able to learn, you'll be able to continue to build on to what you constantly are doing as a leader so you can continually transform your organization. The way you can help us do that, to bring in that top tier talent all the time, is to be able to subscribe down below. Because what that does, it allows us to continue to bring in those type of people that you want to hear. I'll see you in the episode.
Eric, you've built a career at the intersection of branding, strategy, and purpose. What was the moment you realized marketing wasn't just about selling, but about making people feel something real?
Yeah, it's a great question. It probably started when I first started my career in book publishing. I worked at Random House, and I got to work with some really fantastic authors on books that I really believed in. And my first job was as a publicist. And so, basically the job of a publicist in the book industry is to get the word out that the book exists. And I found that when I loved a book, like Zadie Smith's White Teeth was the very first book I got to work on, which is a real privilege. And, and I wanted people to read this book. So I knew it wasn't about selling, right? It was, how do I get people to recognize that this book by this author is something that's actually going to hit home with them, and it's worth spending time on. And, it wasn't about advertising. It wasn't about pithy copy. It was about helping people to understand, like, what's the story? Why would you dive in? And what's it going to mean to you?
Growing up, what was it like as a kid grabbing your first book? And how did it get you into becoming this literary, lover?
Yeah, I don't know if it was the first book that did that. Honestly, I was a little bit late to becoming a big reader. Late meaning like late high school. And there are a few books in high school that I was assigned by my teachers. Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry was one. 1984, George Orwell. They just opened up these different worlds to me. And I don't know. I mean, I found I could just get lost in those worlds and in the characters and in their relationships. And I don't know, it just meant everything.
Tell us about where you grew up.
I grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut, so it's southern Connecticut on Long Island Sound.
Okay.
Yeah, and spent almost my entire childhood there.
What was growing up with your parents and your childhood growing up? And because Right now, you're here at Cigna as VP, executive in marketing. I mean, you went from like growing up, you're reading these different books. You're tied into this particular industry and space, even when through most of your career. But you got to this point in marketing. Kind of explain that journey point from youth all the way up to at this point you're here in New York City, running a team.
Yeah, right on. I mean, like most journeys, it's a little bit circuitous. My plan was never to be in marketing. I never had a plan to be in healthcare. My plan probably as a kid revolved around, I just want to play music. I was a drummer.
Okay.
Right. And I want to read books. I want to write books. And I wanted to be a dilettante. Like that was the goal, right? I'm like, culture's where it's at. And I want to play. But anyway, when I went to college, I studied comparative literature and philosophy. And got really into identity theory and was reading, French and German philosophers and writers, and I became pretty fascinated with different ways that people form their sense of self. And it turns out that branding and marketing, in a lot of ways, is actually about defining who a company is, who a product is, right? Like what makes it unique.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that work on story, on narrative, and, on identity theory has been pretty instrumental to how I approach brand building.
What keeps you in marketing today? From that full transition from like you not even knowing you were going to even get into it to where you've been, how long have you had a career in it at this point?
Yeah, it's been it's been about 20, 25 years, something like that. Yeah.
You must wake up every day with a passion to show up every day for someone to be in it that long. So like, what keeps you in marketing?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is I like the kinds of problems that marketing solves. Ultimately, if you're doing marketing well, you're understanding people. I find people endlessly fascinating. You have to be creative about how you're going to reach people.
Right.
Like emotionally, but also rationally. Like I tend to like these geekier industries, like health insurance. I did a lot in tech. And so, there tends to be a complexity to the industry that I'm working in and that I'm marketing. And I like the puzzle of figuring out, well, how do we make this complex thing understandable? And not only understandable, but how do we make it like connect with people on an emotional level? And so, there are organizational challenges, storytelling challenges, strategy challenges, research challenges, and putting all that together, I just think is a ton of fun. It can be hard, but it's a lot of fun, right?
I mean, I love, let's kind of pivot there. Like, it's hard putting it together because with marketing, I mean, you could learn off of some amazing campaigns, but like even so, you're creating something fresh and new.
That's right.
That maybe someone hasn't seen yet. How does it feel to be an innovator and create something, or you and your team create a campaign that impacts millions of people around the country, and you guys are in this in your office and you created it, and how does that feel? And what goes behind creating stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool when you see your work out in the world. Like, we did a campaign last year. It was focused on health equity.
Okay.
And the line on it was, let's give each person every opportunity to live well. And we were basically telling the stories of how we were trying to drive more equitable health outcomes. And we did these big takeovers in Penn Station and all this at a home in Grand Central. Right, this is my city, New York. So I'd come into work and I'd get to see our work that was, labor of love. It wasn't a foregone conclusion that we needed to have a campaign focused on health equity.
Right.
And it's something I'm personally passionate about. To me, it really makes what we do in healthcare meaningful. And, seeing that up in these spaces, like massive scale, it feels great. It's really cool. There's a lot that goes into making that. I'm happy to dive into any of the pieces there, but there's a lot that goes into making that happen.
Maybe give us your 3 top pieces to the puzzle to create such a fascinating type of campaign or something that's going to reach and touch people? And maybe it's more than three, obviously, but your top pieces that you believe someone can take a nugget from to help them even think more deeper about, man, like, well, how do I even start to get a campaign to think that particular way to impact the person's heart or impact them in a faster way through marketing instead of the long-term way of like getting them to, I don't know, make a purchase at the end of the end of the funnel, right? So, what are those three pieces or more you feel?
Yeah, right on. The first thing, it always has to start with a business need. I think there are many random acts of marketing in the world, meaning we've got to have a campaign, we've got to market, without really understanding why. Sometimes it's about the sale. Not always. In this case, with this campaign, of course, there's a sales component to it. But we were talking about health equity because our clients were asking about it, right? Because their employees were asking about it.
Right.
Right. And, so understanding what matters to our clients, right? What are the challenges that they're facing as a business? What are we doing to address those challenges? And is there something in there that can help us to create a differentiated perception of who we are as a company? And do we actually have evidence and stories that we can tell to prove that we're making good on the promise that we're putting out? And like, that's almost like that's the first place that you're working when you're going to decide if you're going to make an ad campaign, right? Like, what's that business problem? How can we help to uniquely solve it? And that was the genesis. Then on top of that, you actually have to come up with a creative idea.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, all right, there's the business problem. There's like a logical problem that you got to put together, and it's a little bit like a puzzle.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, so what are we going to say, and how are we going to say it? And who are we saying it to, and why? And this was a tough one for us to give birth to, and we work with a creative agency on this campaign. And, you brief them, right? Here are objectives. Here's who we're trying to go after. Here's why. And, the way our agency, McCann, worked, they came to us with like 10 or 12 concepts.
Okay. Just
really thin, but like high level. And they want to see what resonates with me, with the team, right? I want to understand what resonates with my team. And there was some good stuff in there, but like nothing that was ready to publish. And I was actually on set on a shoot in LA with them. And we sat down, we had a drink, and we're like, all right, let's take a look at these 10, 12 concepts and start to narrow it down.
Right.
And I was sitting with a creative director and our head of account, and it was just the three of us, and we were going to go to dinner afterward. And we started playing with the ideas. Well, what if it was like this? And what if it was like that? And honestly, after a long day on set for something else, sitting there, having a drink, unwinding, the creativity started flowing amongst us. And, and we wound up coming up with that line that served as the core of everything that we did in the campaign. So, again, it's like you got to do like the strategy and the puzzle piece, but you also have to kind of unplug, collaborate, right? Have discussions, let the ideas come out. I love that part of the work. I think it's great.
So it's like, you got to have those brainstorming sessions.
Yeah. But
and they, like you said, you sat down at, it was like a coffee shop or something, he said, or somewhere to eat.
Yeah, it was actually at the hotel bar.
At the hotel bar, and then like the ideas started to flow. And it's like in the movies where it's like they're going through a struggle, and then it's like, wait, what did you say? You said that about your mom or dad? It's like, wait, what are you talking about? And then it's like, no, like I figured it out.
Yep.
Like something on NCIS or something like that.
That's 100%.
So that's so I can see like it comes from like creating it, and then you got to like kind of sit on it for a bit, and then then like that Eureka moment comes.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, because one of the ideas that they had in their concept deck was each and every. And that's actually the shorthand that we use internally to talk about this campaign. But where they started, which is not a bad starting point, it was, we give, it's something along the lines of, we help each and every person, achieve their best health.
Right.
And as we were talking it over, it's like, all right, I mean, like there's something there. But then the creative director almost just offhand said, we give each person every opportunity. And I was like, oh, I really like how you just split each and every. It's not about each and every person. It's each person, every opportunity. And when you're talking about health equity, you're talking about how you remove barriers, right? And so that every opportunity to live well is about like the barriers that we can reduce on behalf of our customers. And the each person means we treat each person like an individual.
Right.
And so just that little move was a big unlock for us. And you're right, it felt like a eureka moment. We were pretty pumped after that.
Yeah, you got to feel great.
Totally.
Yeah, because even on my end, I mean, like I'm one of your consumers technically. So it's like, hey, I'm down in Atlanta. I'm driving on the highway. I see this massive billboard that just says "Better by Design."
Oh, right on.
And then each and every I see on the websites or LinkedIn. So I'm just like, even on my it's even joggling my mind because I love marketing. I love different campaigns. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, who did that?
Right
So,
on. We did that.
so it feels it's great to see like the creativity behind it and like how the steps that you went to even create that.
Yep.
And it's a team effort.
Oh yeah, 100%. There are no individual heroes in this work. It really is teamwork.
It takes time. Yeah. So what's your favorite campaign? It doesn't have to be Insignia.
Yeah.
Favorite campaign of just all time?
Yeah. So two come to mind for me. So IBM Smarter Planet is a big one. You and I have talked about this one in the past, but it's a campaign that I worked on for a brand that I worked on for a dozen years and really believe in. And the reason I love that campaign is because it actually offered a worldview and positioned IBM and the technology that they were creating within this broader worldview. And to me, that's like, the pinnacle of what you can do with a marketing campaign. It offers new perspective. Another one, which, didn't work out so well in the end, but it operated similarly, was BP's Beyond Petroleum.
I think I remember that one.
Do you? Yeah. I mean, it did not end well in the Gulf.
Right,
yeah. But the idea behind it and the ambition behind using an ad campaign and building a brand for a legacy oil and gas company to shift its business strategy into alternative energy. Again, it didn't actually pan out that way, but the ambition that was there was absolutely enormous. And I thought that storytelling was inspiring. Again, I thought it pointed toward the future of energy in a way that was really inspiring. I wish it was true. I wish it had been true.
Yeah, and that was a tough one for them a while ago.
For sure.
One thing I wanted to share is like, how do you shift from, okay, so you have your good campaigns where everything's going well. You set up your own campaigns like for B2B or even B2C or even for a personal brand. Yep. What about like, I've seen some like artists in the past and stuff, they utilize bad marketing, or is it bad I'm freezing, my brain is freezing right now. They utilize like bad, oh my gosh, I can't even get it. We'll edit this out.
Yeah, that's cool.
My brain is tripping right now. Yeah, like Kanye West, when he utilizes, like, if it's something bad that happens, he'll utilize it for good. I'm just trying to get I can't even like get the word out. But anyways, we'll continue on that. So like some people utilize like maybe an artist or like a company, and they might utilize bad press. There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
Bad press to help their campaigns.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on that? Like, you have good solid campaign, good one, and then hey, maybe like the BP situation happened. How do you turn that for like utilize what was is negative in the news for good?
Yeah, well, I'll take an example because I actually think it's a really fun starting point, or it can also be really productive. So if you take the brand Domino's Pizza.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Right? Like if you remember however many years ago now, they basically were like, mea culpa, right? You've been telling us that the quality of our pizza has declined for years, and we hear you. And so, we've revamped our recipe. We've revamped our quality standards. They built a whole ad campaign around this. Right? They built an app focused on that. I thought it was a really great relaunch of that brand. And again, it basically started with this honest and authentic recognition that they could do better.
Right.
And I mean, I thought that was pretty ingenious, frankly, because you're like, all right, I know Domino's from back in the day. Like, maybe I'd be willing to give them a shot again.
We try it again.
Yeah, which is cool.
And that is true. Like, honestly, like now Domino's is looked at. I mean, it's probably a little bit, better than Pizza Hut at this point, I believe.
Yeah, probably, yeah. I don't have the data, but I would imagine so.
Yeah, so they do great with their campaigns. So my next question to you is, when it comes down to the culture shift and advancement in marketing and tech and media and culture,
yep.
What do you see that, what shift has taken place that you've seen?
So I think the most significant shift of the last 15 years in marketing and media is just it's a bit of a cliche to say it at this point, but it's the proliferation of channels. We don't have mass media anymore. Like, that's not really an option. So, there's still certain flagship moments like the Super Bowl where you're going to get tens of millions of people watching. It turns out White Lotus, is a cultural flashpoint, but there's no advertising during White Lotus, at least, not on Max, not while it's live. But with all the social channels, with all of the, I mean, frankly, the bubbles that have been created by media, it's created a much more complex media landscape than we've ever had. And in order to market into that media landscape, right, one of the benefits is that it's a little bit easier to target who you want to target. You know who's going to watch what, right? You can, get a little bit of a clearer understanding of what they value. You can drop your message in to those bubbles. But there isn't like a spot where it'd be like, we're just going to run TV on prime time, and like the sitcom lineup on Thursday night. That doesn't exist. And so, again, that really means that you can be much more targeted, which means, though, you're fracturing your audiences. It means you need often different content to reach those different audiences in different formats to meet the channel requirements, but also the channel norms. So, like, if you think about, I don't know, like an Instagram, right? Like, there are like literally, certain requirements for the format of a video or an image that you put on there.
Yeah.
But then the norms change all the time. Get all these different trends of the kinds of posts that people are doing and what they're responding to, right? Because people are creative.
Yeah.
And so, like, that keeps it all fresh, but it also means that as a marketer, you've got to stay on top of that stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, so you've got to be consuming a lot in order to be able to create in ways that, are on trend. But then you also want to try and break that and create something new, and that tension of being a constant consumer, right? And, like, I mean, it's hard work, but it's interesting.
It's interesting, the back and forth. That is very true. Yeah, because, like, you want to stick to the trend, so you have to be always on social media. And then you want to be able to, like you said, you want to be able to, like, create something innovative, different.
That's right.
But it's unique, like we were just talking about, like in this day and age, like that you could track everything now. You could track every metric.
Totally.
I mean, those was a UTM parameters you could put on like an ad, and you could be like, they bounced from this site, that site, this site, that site.
That's right.
And they went all over the place.
Yes.
So you could be more accurate.
You can. It's also, I'll say, really easy for people to get lost in the data.
That's good. That's good. No, explain. This is good.
All right. So, like, to your point, you can track everything. You can see what people are doing everywhere. And so, it's like you just throw a whole lot of data up in the air. And if you want to chase every single data point, at some point it's like it's going to lose meaning, right? You can know exactly what happened, but you have no idea why. And so the trick in all of this, right? It's to be able to see the forest through the trees. Right. Well, how do we look at the data in order to be able to understand the behavior and the values? And then what does that tell us and what does that mean? And, there's still plenty of times when, we'll be looking at campaign performance and I'm getting a lot of media measures.
Yeah.
X number of people watched this. They watched it through completion, right? The bounce rate was, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm okay, but what does that tell us? Right? Did the content resonate? Didn't it resonate? With who? Why? Was it because, like, the subject matter was interesting, or did we do something tonally that was, just arresting for people, or that put people off. And so you really have to ask those questions and not just take the data for granted. Oh, we got 300,000 views. Okay, is that good?
Right.
Right? But what did they think after they saw whatever we showed them? Right? What did it mean to them? And if you're not asking those questions and you're just satisfied with volume, then you're not really learning through the process of marketing.
That's good. That's good, because I believe that happens to a lot of people when you see all this amazing data.
Yep.
And it's scattered. Like, you have to organize that data, but look at what's most important.
That's right.
And out of that, because you can get caught up in it. Like, oh yeah, we got 300,000 views or 1 million views, but it's like, could you have gotten more?
Right.
How do you pick out who out of that 300,000 or 1 million were like the folks you need to really target, or
That's
was
right.
it just So that's where I know in marketing it can get kind of confusing.
Well, yeah, it turns in. I mean, there's the science and the art. Another cliche about marketing, right? But like the science is almost like an engineering project, right? Who are we trying to reach through which channels in order to, impact what behavior of that audience or perception of that audience? How are we going to do that? What's the content, right? And like you can map all that, but then the art of it is like you actually have to make something.
Yes.
And you have to make something. We're all inundated with content in our daily lives. And, honestly, I try and skip ads everywhere I possibly can.
I'm the same way.
Right? Like, I don't want them. I don't want to see it. And so it's kind of amazing when an ad actually captures your attention. And you're like, oh, that was pretty cool. Oh, it's an ad? All right, it was still pretty good. I got to give it to them. I think like that's what we're up against as marketers.
That's deep. No, thanks for sharing that, because I feel like a lot of people do get caught up in all the numbers and all this stuff, but you really have to look at the concrete stuff that works for you. Like, what's the most important. So,
right.
What kind of leadership at this moment is the type of leadership that should be that every corporation, business and the B2B business should have the focus in, like even in the C-suite, like what type of leadership should folks have on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I feel like that's a really timely question. Actually, we are in this cultural moment right now where the style of leadership at the top of nation states is changing. I feel like for years there was a lot of focus on collaboration, data-informed decision-making. And right now, the whole world seems to be shifting to more of an autocratic style. And I don't think that is a good thing, which it seems insane to have to say, that autocracy is not a good thing. But I think that holds. I think it holds, and when you think about politics, but I think it also is important in a business context.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, these are two very famous business leaders who have created amazing results in their businesses, who are notoriously difficult to work for.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of business leaders emulate that. And then I think there are a lot of business leaders who recognize that trying to rule by fear, trying to rule by by putting people in their place, at the end of the day, it kind of diminishes the human spirit. And in order for a company to do great things, in order for a company to be a great employer, in order for a company to contribute something new and valuable to society, I think it does start with what the culture of that company is actually like.
Right.
So for me, I think it's really important that leaders lead with humility, lead with a vision for where they want to go and what value they believe the company can deliver to their constituents, to their customers. I believe it's really important to have an inclusive leadership style. I know for me, I need to hear diverse perspectives from my team, from our customers, in order for us to create something new and valuable. If I'm dictating everything, then the only voice that's heard is mine. And frankly, I don't think I'm interesting enough or smart enough to be the only voice that makes an impact. So, I'm fortunate. Cigna is a very collaborative environment. We've got a really strong leadership team, a lot of humility paired with deep intelligence and expertise. I think those are some of the qualities that matter most.
That's beautiful. I mean, like, yeah, working in a collaborative environment allows you to grow. I mean, I know, like, over time, even jobs I worked when I was younger, like some folks may not want to bring you up with you or like be in that collaborative environment. What's your thoughts on, like, when you have leaders that you have two different type of leaders, right? Well, multiple different variety of leaders, but leaders that when they help bring someone up with them, that wants to make them better, and grow them internally, versus like the opposite. What's your thoughts on just like helping someone grow, and then like, you never know, they grow in the company or they may go somewhere else and they may blossom elsewhere or internally. But what's your thoughts on that process when you pour into somebody?
Yeah, I love that, and it's one of my favorite parts of the job. The job of being a leader in a business environment. I mean, of course, like, as much as anyone can, you try and create a culture and an environment in your department or in your company where people feel like they can grow and they've got opportunities to grow.
Right.
But I think what you're also talking about is mentorship. And what I find is that there needs to be that's a very personal thing. You can't be everyone on your team's mentor.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Too much time.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, too much time, but also not everyone wants it. Or not everyone wants it from you.
Yep.
And that's okay. But then there are those times when you find, that there's someone who you've got a strong connection with.
Right.
And, you see something in them and they see something in you. And as you're talking, like, it starts to click. Right, the relationship starts to click, and you're like, oh, like, I see where you're trying to go, right? And let me understand how you're approaching that. Let me understand, like, what gaps you see. Let me point out some of the gaps, but also some of the strengths that you might not see in yourself. And like that process of getting to know somebody, and really working with them and seeing them for who they are and who they want to become. I mean, that's relationship building, right? Like, this is how you wind up building, I think, strong friendships, strong marriages, strong relationships with your child. And it's the same thing with your coworkers, right? It's like when you can build those kinds of relationships. I know I always grow when I'm a mentor, and I've had many mentors in my career who have helped me to grow. And yeah, anyway, I think it's a great part of working in a collaborative environment, and it's an honor to be able to do that as a business leader.
I love that. Yeah, because it helps, like, when you pour into others, like, and years down the road, like, yeah, Eric, he helped me through this moment, and it just, yeah, like it's just like you're helping someone get to the next level, and I feel like you're definitely, like, you're able to help someone, like, extend and push into their new, where I know, and when you work with people on a day-to-day basis, I mean, that's like your family. I mean, they're not, but they're like your family every day. Like, this is a person you see every day during the week, Monday through Friday.
That's right.
So it's like, what during that time, how can that person be impacted throughout the time that they're here?
Totally. And how are they going to impact me? Like, again, like, even when you're the mentor, you're going to grow in that mentoring relationship.
Right.
And like, that's a beautiful thing. One of my former managers, Mike Triplett, who was kind of a legendary member of the Cigna community, he had this notion that I hold with me. I think it's really beautiful that, like, as a leader, it's kind of like you're crossing a bridge.
Yeah.
Right? You're building your career, and it's kind of like you're crossing a bridge as you're building your career. And if you find yourself on the other side of the bridge and you're all alone, you did it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you did it wrong. Because the only way to really get there well and to set yourself up, to set your company up, to set the culture up, your coworkers up for success is by like all of us, let's get over that bridge together.
Right.
And I don't know. I think that's a pretty beautiful way of thinking about it.
No, great. No, greatly explained. No, I appreciate that because I believe, yeah, like mindsets, like you said, there's a mindset shift happening in culture in general,
Yeah.
and in the corporate and also in the B2C space, and exactly what you said, like that's the type of attitude, that's the type of like energy you're supposed to bring with anyone, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, I don't know that everyone feels that way, but to me, it's important.
No, that's true. So when it comes to the most important skill as a marketer, I'm a brand new person. I just came out of college.
Yeah.
Eric, what kind of skill set do I need? Well, actually, let's say this. I just went into college. I want to be a marketer real bad coming out after my 4 years. What kind of skill set do I need? What kind of skills do I need to tack on?
Yep.
So when I come out, I'm ready to go for the industry.
Yeah, right on. I think in so many ways, this is about at least getting the two poles down early in your career. So, and the two poles really are that analytic mindset and a creative ability.
Right.
And so, it's interesting. You get kids who go to art school. Maybe they study graphic design, maybe they study advertising, right? Like, but they basically go to art school and they start like learning the creative side and they can make stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of those people early in their career haven't yet had exposure to the kind of business thinking that's required to aim the creativity as effectively as it could be or should be. And then on the other hand, you get people early in their career going to business school, really studying like, okay, what are we doing in this business? How do I think like a business person? How can I be analytical, be data driven, and try and drive growth? But then when it comes time to actually create something from a marketing standpoint, they don't have those creativity skills built up.
Right.
And so like building that balance and being able to kind of navigate your career and be ambidextrous, I think is absolutely essential for a marketer. So anyway, for anyone earlier in their career, I'm like, hold those two poles and grow them both.
That's good. Yeah, I like that. Like, it's kind of like, being versatile, like having a little bit of everything, but like maybe someone focuses on one area, but like at least having that understanding, right?
Yeah.
In that sense.
That's right. Sense. Yeah, like you can be a specialist in data and analytics and be a fantastic data and analytics person in marketing. And if that's your jam, great. But if you don't understand this other side, you don't have to be a great practitioner of creativity.
Right.
If you don't understand it, it's going to make you less good as a marketing data and analytics professional, just inevitably.
I see. Where's brand building headed next?
Yeah, this is one of those questions where every time there's a new technology, everyone like says, "Oh, it's there."
That's where it's at.
Totally. So I don't know if you remember, but when like Amazon Alexa and Siri came up, right? Everyone was like, the user interface of voice, like that's the next brand frontier.
Right.
I don't think that's really materialized. I think some people might say AI, right? Like you want to make sure that as a company or as a brand, you're influencing the responses that you get out of ChatGPT on your domain of expertise.
Right.
I think that's probably true, and that's going to come to pass to some extent over the next couple of years. But the reality to me in brand building is that like just because a new technology comes on the scene, the other technologies, the other media, it doesn't actually go away.
Right.
We still have radio, we still have billboards, we still have TV, mostly non-linear now, but there's still linear TV. You still have social. Yes, there's voice. Yes, there's AI. And so you wind up with just a more complex tapestry.
Right.
And the question is, where are you going to place your bets? And so I think that the future of brand building is in being really intelligent about where you place your bets for your business based on what you're trying to accomplish and who you're trying to reach. And again, it just gets almost like infinitely more complex the more channels there are.
That makes complete sense. I mean, even when you're diving into the AI piece, I mean, right now, even diving into a question, how is like the ChatGPT era, Gemini era, DeepSeek era, helping marketers today get more creative? Do you feel that it's a hindrance? Do you feel like, hey, the critical thinking is going to be lost? Do you feel that it's just an aid? How is that kind of coming together on the AI piece with marketing?
Yeah, I can tell you how I use it, and how I encourage my teams to use it, and also how they encourage me to use it, which really is as an accelerator. There have been times when, I asked my team to create some website copy.
Yeah.
I didn't give them a good brief. That was on me, right? I did not brief them well. And so the copy that I got back, I was like, it's not hitting the mark. Okay, again, I view that as my challenge because I didn't brief them well. And then I'm like, if I just go and send them back with another poor brief, I'm, again, not going to get back what I want. And then a week's going to pass, and 2 weeks are going to pass. So I thought, what if I just take an hour and I start prompting ChatGPT, right? And I use it almost as a thought partner so that I can get to a better brief. And then once I got to the better brief, I was like, oh, right, because this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And I didn't say that. And actually, it wasn't even clear to me until I went through this process. Now let me drop in the copy and prompt GPT to tweak it in particular ways. And I spent, 30, 45 minutes, and it was a small block of copy, working it. And by the end, I was like, all right, that's pretty good. Good enough for me to share with my team now, and to tell them about the process, and to tell them what I discovered through it and what I think we should try and accomplish, and then get their input and feedback. So I really enjoyed that because I was like, oh, this is a really cool way for me to clarify my thinking without imposing my sloppiness on my team and having them burn, time and hours. So I think when used like that, it's goodness. I can dive into some of the stuff that I think could be challenging with AI. I don't know, you asked, do I think it's going to hinder critical thinking? I think it could. I think that we have a lot of threats to critical thinking. Socially.
Yeah, that's true.
AI is one of them. I think that, we started this conversation like I was a lit kid, right? Philosophy student. To me, the humanities, those are the disciplines where we learn critical thinking.
Yeah. And
the number of humanities majors is plummeting right now. And I think that's scary. I think that, I think that is going to be to our detriment because we're not teaching as many people how to think critically through humanistic inquiry. And I think that's huge. I also think, too, that, the rise of the soundbite is kind of hindering our critical thinking ability.
That's true.
Right? Because people want, it's like, what's the quick hit? That's too long. Even the TLDR, right? Too long, didn't read. Right? It's like, okay. But in order to understand why a conclusion is valid, you have to understand the assumptions that go into the argument. You have to understand the logical chain that gets you from here to the conclusion. And if you can't map it, you don't know it. So do I think AI is to the detriment of critical thinking? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But I think that our lack of emphasis on and the lack of social value that we put on humanistic inquiry, story development, argumentation, I think that's to the detriment of critical thinking, and that does worry me.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I try and surround myself with people on my team, my colleagues. I look for people who can think critically and who can challenge me because that's how we get better.
That's good. I literally was at church last Sunday, and it was talking about the closest 5 people to you is who you'll become.
Right on.
And that is true. It's true. Whoever you're hearing all the time, it's like, I'll never change of how maybe that person be. No, but it's true. If you hear something every day, and that's in your head, and it's like a recorder,
that's right.
You'll start to kind of change your habits to that. So it's interesting to hear that, you're always trying to better yourself with your team, so they can be able to any type of critical thinking. It's like you said, it helps keep you on point.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny you said about the soundbite, because it's so true in society today. Like 15 seconds, 30 seconds. Oh my gosh, that's what they said. And then you miss out on the long form content that gives you the context to the entire piece of the information that you're supposed to get.
Totally. Yeah. And like, you know, yeah, I mean, this is something like this has been a challenge for a long time. Like, even it makes you feel a little bit like a Luddite, but like when TV first started in the 50s, 60s, right? Like, all of a sudden, like, that's the death of critical thinking.
Oh no.
Yeah, totally, right? It's like, you know, we're just watching and you're just consuming and you're passive. And okay, and then, you know, okay, now movies, death of critical thinking. Right? Like, if they're going to replace novels, they're going to replace books. We're not diving into words in the same way. The technology actually changes how we think. Okay? Then, you know, the internet, right? Totally different medium. Social media, totally different medium. And you see this, like, in the difference between newscasts on the radio in the 30s, on television in the 60s, you know, and then today, most people are getting their news in short form bursts on Facebook, on Instagram, right? And like, so the way that we're engaging information changes depending on the technology that we're consuming the information from. And that ultimately, to your point about like, who are the 5 people you surround yourself with because you're going to become them? And corollary to that is, what media do you consume? Because your brain is going to shift and start thinking like that media.
That is good,
right? Which is huge. And this is the story of human development, and right, but where we are, it's uncharted territory. So we'll see where we wind up.
That is good, man. Thanks for sharing that, because that change. I mean, they always say what if you want to hide something, information, just put it in a book, and just put it in a book, or, you know, a podcast, whatever. But I mean, it's kind of true. Like, a lot of people, they'll kind of go more towards the entertainment for the most part. But like, if you read a book, if you're listening to a podcast where someone's like giving you information right now information, you're gonna take that, soak that into your spirit and your soul, and you're gonna go ahead and like implement or think in different ways than you have before.
That's right.
Because I know, like, I mean, man, like, growing up, think about it, like, how has your thought process, your critical thinking, the conversations that you have changed over time? You're probably not talking about, I don't know, just to make a joke, Power Rangers anymore, right? You're talking, you have some more deeper combos than that,
for sure.
Or you're having more intuitive combos. So like, even that process, that's real important. I think about just family members and stuff like that, just how, like, what kind of conversations, or like your friends growing up is like, man, I can't have the same convo, like, hey, how's it going? It's great to see you again. And then it kind of stops there a little bit. How's the family? And it's like, you know, so that's good what you just said, man. That's so true.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I mean, it is interesting that, like, I don't know. I was talking with my daughter last night. She's 15. We hadn't let her have Instagram. She's like one of the only people in her age group who does not have Instagram. She's not happy about that. She's on TikTok. I mean, like, we're not, you know, completely abstinent, right? But like, so last night we agreed to let her have Instagram. But of course, you know, the price that she had to pay was that we had to have a deep conversation about what it means to use social media responsibly, but also how difficult it is. I struggle with it. You know, 2 nights ago, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be in bed by 10:30, right? And then I'm sitting there on my iPad doom scrolling for another hour. And, you know, so of course you wake up the next day, you're not at 100%, you're a little bit tired. And so we talked about that. But the other thing, too, that I was really proud of with Leah, is my daughter's name, you know, she said, Dad, look, like, I understand what you're saying, and I get that it's a challenge. And obviously I'm using my language, I'm not. But, you know, she said, but the truth is that I'm actually pretty good. When we're together, I'm present. I'm not on my phone when we're together. And I'm not drawn into the phone when we're together. And she's like, and I'm like that with my friends too. When we're together, we're hanging out like this. Good. I'm not on my phone. And I was really proud of her because I was like, all right, that's huge. And I have seen some of her friends that come over to the house and they're glued to the phone.
Like just looking at it.
Even while they're like hanging out.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyway, like my point in all of this, maybe it's belabored, but like, you know, we have to do more work to be present and have those deeper conversations with one another now, because so much of our time is kind of, you know, spent in this media that doesn't actually reward being present, and it doesn't ask much of you other than just like consume and be entertained.
So good. And tell your daughter, that's great. I mean, quote in a sense, like be present.
Yeah.
Be present all the time you can, you know,
Yeah.
because you don't want to miss an opportunity.
No, I mean, like, that's life, right? You don't want to miss life.
So true. So what's your favorite book?
My favorite novel is Sophie's Choice
Okay.
by William Styron. It's like gorgeously written. It had multiple genres coming together in really surprising ways. When I read that book, it absolutely blew my mind. And then my favorite book of nonfiction is, I guess, the book that had one of the biggest impacts on me is called The Metaphysical Club by Louis Menand, who is, I think he's a history professor, maybe an American studies professor at Harvard. And it's a history of pragmatism in America and how pragmatism became the American philosophy. And that completely shifted the way that I think about things.
You know, it's interesting. There's a show called Timeless I started watching. And it just takes you, it's a time machine, and they go back and basically like someone's trying to change time. And there's a group that literally is trying to stop this person. And there's this whole twist at the end, but it's just unique seeing every aspect of time and how they're bringing in like it was 2017 they filmed it, but they're bringing like information and stuff from 2017 to talk to these people. Abraham Lincoln, they're talking to all so it's just
cool.
Interesting having these conversations. I'm just like thinking like, what if that did happen, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, when you talk about the guy's his history teacher and all that, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny, right? It was almost like we have the ability, obviously, for the past, for their information to influence what happens in the future. Right now, anyway, we don't have the technology to go in the other direction.
Right.
But it's pretty cool that like we literally have thousands of years of human knowledge that we can mine for insight, for intelligence, and like a lot of it, like you said, it's hiding in books.
It's hiding
in books, and if you can unearth it, right, like, you know, I mean, that's goodness. That's the human trip.
Exactly. So definitely, I'm going to stay on top of you to make sure, like, hey, what kind of books are you reading this year? Because I'm always asking questions on that. Because I think even for myself, I'm a big personal development book guy, and always looking to figure out different ways on like if it's on sales, marketing, you know. But sometimes, would you? I don't know if you agree or not. Like sometimes even reading, you know, some just fiction. Gives you ideas in a different way, even probably for marketing for what you do.
100%. I find fiction is almost like an empathy machine. Like fiction that's done well helps you see from different perspectives. And again, I think that is like, that's a creative catalyst. Being able to see from different perspectives, like that allows you to do more. So I'm a huge believer in fiction. I think it's the best. I really love it.
Love that.
What's your favorite book? So I'm curious.
That's good.
You know, especially for like personal development.
I would say my favorite book that I've read that is stuck in my mind all the time is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a great book. I loved, the late night DJ voice. He talks about when you're having a conversation with someone and just understanding like, you matching the tone, marrying a person. I mean, it's used in sales and stuff too, but it's just interesting, like even in your conversations daily, like having the emotional intelligence to just be aware, seeing yourself, instead of just being first person, see it from third person. Look at both point of views and understand what the person's going through. Sometimes you might have to, even like Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's another really good book I love. just when you knowing when to say something and when not to, and just being I guess it's just emotional intelligence, honestly. So those two, I would say those two books have heavy hitters in my life for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, well, emotional intelligence, but the other thing that you said was being able to shift perspective, right? Which again is like, it's empathy, right? Like, be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's huge.
So good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Eric, we're at this point of the end of the podcast where we normally, what we do is we have a guest that was on our podcast previously that answered a question from a previous guest.
Sure.
Now that guest wrote you a question that's in that envelope. I know you've been wondering, like, what is this white envelope sitting on the table?
That's what that is.
So what we're going to have you do, two things. First thing is we're going to have you go ahead and you're going to open the envelope. Once you open the envelope, you're going to read the person's name.
Okay.
And then you're going to flip the card and then answer the question.
Cool.
After you're done, then you're going to go ahead and write your question to the next person following the same format. So we're going to go have you open it up and
all right. Amazing.
See what they said.
I like this practice. It's really cool. All right. This is from Christina Orlando. And she is asking me, when your time comes to leave this earth, what do you want to be remembered for?
Ooh, that's a good one, Christina.
That's a big one.
Goodness, Christina.
She's asking me about the meaning of my life. Thanks, Christina. What do I want to be remembered for? I mean, I think it's actually pretty, it's fairly small. I want to be remembered by my family and by my friends. And I want to be remembered as someone who made a positive impact in their lives, however they define that. I guess, like, really at the end of the day, it comes down to the relationships that you have. Anything else, any of the marketing, like any of the, stories, like anything else is gravy. But like, if you don't have those relationships, if they aren't true, if they aren't deep, if they aren't authentic, if they don't make an impact, it's kind of useless.
Powerful. That's deep. I mean, man, yeah, that's needed. And I think a lot of, going with that mindset in life, like, is gonna, push you to success. I mean, and even in your life. So, like, thank you for sharing that. And Christina, great question.
Yeah, great question, Christina.
Eric, now it's your turn.
Okay, so
got a white card right there. Follow the same format Christina did. Just, put your name on there, and then on the back of the lines, you can go ahead and do that. So, Eric, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This is amazing, man.
Yeah, thank you, Quentin. This is great. I really enjoyed it. And I'm so glad we actually get to meet in person for this. It's awesome.
Get a good come in person, and it worked out.
Cool.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, when in life you begin to dive deeper into knowledge, you begin to soak in as much knowledge as possible to be able to elevate yourself to a different level, to have different type of thinking, critical thinking, that's going to push you into a different place. What you've heard from Eric is where you need to begin to start working on in your life, in your business. If you're in corporate, begin to think about the things he talked about and how it can impact what you're doing at a high level. This is an amazing podcast. We really appreciate having him on, and hopefully have him on for a second one. Thanks again, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Quentin.